Just before leaving my internship congregation, I was gifted with this beautiful painting. I asked to buy it, but the artist refused. As an immigrant himself, he recognized that I saw in the work a picture of the traveler I had become when I left the land of my birth. The picture replicates my memories of leave-taking, from familiar home and family to the unknown territory called the United States of America. I had, on the day of departure, a single suitcase, a tote bag, a handbag, and a ridiculously unnecessary straw hat sporting a long blue ribbon tie. Ahead was a road never traveled by anyone in my immediate family, and none of them were with me on this journey. I was sure of only two things. The first, someone had placed an incredible opportunity before me, and my family had consented to it. The second was that 4 people and several churches supporting their decision were waiting to welcome me at the end of the road. Everything else was in question and pending my faithfulness to the travel plans. I hadn't noticed until recently that the shadows in the painting extend behind the young woman and her suitcase, and so I decided it was a morning image to match the time when I said goodbye to home many years ago. The highway sign is so far in the distance that the information converges into a cross, and I'm sure that was probably a choice of the artists. The mountains framing the path ahead, the darker path beyond the mountain pass, have intense symbolic value for a traveler. No journey's end appears in the painting, except as an assumption of the visible path, and the distant cross promising direction for the way forward. All the previous certainties of the traveler were rendered irrelevant by the simple step forward on the path. Only time would reveal to the traveler what understandings from the past remained to direct and influence the uncharted future. And in this painting, the traveler is not looking back. Seated opposite this painting as I continued to study the Acts text for this Sunday, I remember one commentator reflecting on the fact that Peter and John were present in the moment of opportunity to step forward and deliver healing for the needy beggar. They did not know, as their journey with Jesus began, how much like Jesus they were to become. They stepped onto the road of discipleship with a single suitcase in hand. They were following a teacher. It was a common practice in those days. Rabbis gathered learners who followed them around to hear, see, and replicate what they witnessed of their master's trade. The curriculum was also the practicum. Watch, listen, learn, do. But Jesus as a teacher was a tough act to follow. Jesus attracted thousands of people, not only because of his unique miracles, but because he taught with authority most other teachers did not use. In fact, Jesus was regularly accused of being a fraud because he didn't do things the way other rabbis did and seemed to assume authority on the scale of the divine, which he was. When Jesus sent out his disciples on internship around the region, he counseled them to follow his example, even to limiting their carry-on luggage. Their ministry journey was as much about obeying his instructions as it was about mirroring the teacher. And one more important step, the most significant of all, their work was grounded in the authority of Jesus. Their singular certainty was their faith in the authority of the one who had sent them. When Peter and John set their feet on the steps of the temple, they were without the earthly presence of their master, but they had entered a new phase of the journey with him, empowered by his Spirit. They were facing the sun, heading into a new day, and walking out from the shadow of their doubt and despair. their uncertainty about a future Jesus said they would have in the service of their God. Jesus had taught them to pray, a prayer we faithfully commit to memory and pledge anew with predictable regularity. They were on their way to the place where people gathered daily for prayer before day's end. Before they could even enter the hall, human need called out to them, in the form of a man whose ability to care for himself was limited at birth. Nameless, kind people took the man one step beyond his own capacity. They laid him at the temple steps. Peter and John heard his cry for the common and ordinary bread for his body. Immediately, a new ministry opportunity was opened before them, a gift that would bless his entire being. The moment in the story most moving for me was their command to the beggar to look into their faces, not because their faces or their words had anything to offer him. It became a God sees you moment in which the authority and the name of their master Jesus delivered healing power to his vulnerable limbs. The beggar's reaction wrote the greatest finale. He followed them on into the place of worship with an unmistakable prayer of thanksgiving to the one who had truly raised him up from a lifetime of limitation. The clamor he created continued the earthquake of change that Jesus had begun. The disciples of first-century Christianity were called to a mission that was all risk, bathed, however, in the grace of God who strengthened and encouraged them as they cut new paths for the gospel message. It seems somehow that risk inevitably crosses the path of God's people as we travel with the good news. We follow the movement of the Spirit with just enough light for a step. We follow as sheep do a shepherd, giving over the plot and plan of the journey to the shepherd, the one God who knows the way, the one God who knows our capacity for the journey, the one God who has been there ahead of us and surrendered, as we must, to obedience so that the glory of God could be revealed. This is the message of Easter. Amen.